All right, welcome back. It's still Good Morning Nigeria, live on the network service of the NTA. And before we get into our conversation, which is on the proposed domestic workers and employers bill, let's take a look at this background report.
Domestic work is an essential part of many households in Nigeria, providing services such as childcare, cleaning, cooking, as well as taking care of the elderly. Despite their critical contributions to socio-economic development of the country, domestic workers remain invisible, undervalued, and vulnerable to exploitations and abuses. The absence of legal frameworks to cater for this kind of workforce in most cases perpetuates marginalization while leaving them with no option to basic labor rights and protections. Another twist is that these workers are resorting to violence in getting what they think they deserve. Stories from across the country confirm many are throwing caution to the wind with unwholesome practices. Recorded on May 7, 2015, the police in Enugu arrested a domestic worker, Joseph Ije, for allegedly murdering his 65-year-old employer, Agnes Elwe, over issues of fund diversion. Similarly, on October 31, 2018, a Togolese cook, Sunday Anani, reportedly murdered the chief executive officer of Credit Switch Limited, Chief Ope Badamesi, and fled with some valuables 3 days after he was employed. These and more of such cases occur regularly, with latest being Dr. Aribemchuku Ajimogobia. A proposed bill sponsored by Senator Babangida Hosseini is looking into these matters. If it scales through legislative hurdles, it will protect employers and members of his family from any danger or harm emanating from any domestic staff. Many project that if the bill is given the desired attention, perhaps it will at least address some anomaly, like the case of the recently slain daughter of Justice Rita Ofili Ajimogobia by some alleged domestic workers. The bill will also address challenges facing domestic workers and establish a comprehensive legal framework for the documentation, regulation, and protection of these categories of workers in Nigeria. But the question is, would these be provide solutions to reduce and deter the propensity of domestic workers' connivance with criminal elements against their employers? How would the rights and privileges of domestic workers be guaranteed by law to prescribe number of hours to work per day, protection from sexual abuse, physical abuse, as well as forced labor? These and many more will be our focus today on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you, Dennis Temple, for that background report. And to get into the conversation proper, let me start by introducing here in the studio Senator Babangida Hussaini, Wakilin Kazauri, who represents the Jigawa North-West Senatorial District. It's a pleasure to welcome you, distinguished.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
All right. We have also been joined here in the studio by AIG Wilson Nalegu, who is retired former AIG Zone 9, Umahia, and also former CP of the FCT, Ekiti, and Kogi States. Thank you for joining us.
I'm delighted to be here.
At least for the first time in a while. Thank you.
All right, we also have joining us for the conversation, Grace Pam, Director, Women and Children, National Human Rights Commission. Many thanks for joining us, Grace.
Thank you very much for having me this morning.
All right, and joining us all the way from Abeokuta via TVU Park, we have Professor Bernard Oumi, Department of Sociology, University of Ibadan, and presently a visiting professor and Dean, Postgraduate College, Christland University, Abeokuta, Ogun State. Many thanks, Prof, for joining us.
Thank you.
All right, let's begin this conversation from here in the studio. Senator Hussaini is sponsor of that bill, which focuses on domestic help and their employers. Could you give us further background to it? What led to it? We have examples all over, but we don't even have a lot of the employer end of it. So what drove you into pushing for this bill?
Okay, once again, thank you for having me, and good morning, Nigeria. let me give context to what really inspired me to sponsor the bill. In 1998, one of the finest pilots in Nigerian Airways was murdered by her domestic workers, Hadiza Obo. It was widely celebrated. That is not the story, because there are reported cases like that all over Nigeria. But the story was that after the police had done thorough investigation, arrested the culprits, her domestic staff, they were charged to court, bailed, they simply disappeared into thin air. There was no record, no trace of their, no trace. I think that was what really inspired me to start thinking, how do we address this problem of, domestic workers' connivance with criminal elements in the society to bring harm to their employers. Secondly, the global best practice is that this segment of the society, which is approximated to be about 20 million, can contribute significantly to national development, national planning. But here we don't have any record of such category of workers. Thirdly, and most importantly, again, on the part of the employers as well, we have reported cases of sexual abuse, physical abuse, no regulation or any legal framework to protect this category of workers. So, in total sum, these are the issues that germinated to the development of the bill. And I'm happy to say that the first reading went on eventful. The second reading, a lot of inputs were taken from the members of the National Assembly, the Senate in particular. And then the third reading also, which involved critical stakeholders, the CSOs, the NGOs, the government agencies, all contributed to crafting and bringing in inputs for further legislative action. So, contextually, these are the background.
What was the mood? What was the mood in the Senate while this bill was being discussed? And I ask because of the broad spectrum of people that are usually affected by things like this.
Well, the mood was sober. I remember at the third reading, Senator Victor Ume, my very close friend, narrated his very sad experience, how he lost his child to the activities of a domestic worker. The reported cases are just a tip of the iceberg. If you go through the larger society, there are far more all reported cases of connivance between criminal elements and the domestic workers in their households. At the same time, you have cases of even nannies and households taking the children of their employees away and disappearing into thin air. These are all very common stories that we see and we hear every day.
Oh, of course, we agree with you, Senator Hosseini. But could you tell us, some of the elements in this bill? Because I know that the Senate President kicked against, a commission, to cater for domestic workers and yes, all of that. So tell us some of the elements that.
Well, the key elements basically is that we intend to have a domestic workers information system to be domesticated or housed in the Ministry of Labor and Productivity. And then at the same time, we have established framework. One, the age limit of employment was raised to 18 years. You can't employ any domestic worker if he or she is below 18 years. At the same time, you also, the issue of working hours was also captured and embedded. The maximum hour that you can engage a domestic help can be more than 10 hours with 2 hours rest period. And then provision for water and sanitation facilities and other key component of employment as captured in the formal sector were also incorporated into the bill. Beyond all of that, the most exciting component is the issue of creating a national domestic workers information system. And it is to be done by proxies. The intendment is to have agencies who will generate this information from the proposed employees, their biometric, their history, their previous employment record, their character references. This should all be captured in the main database. The intention is, if there is any case of suspicion or collusion or any need for checking the biometrics of the employee, with the click of a button, it will be available. But the most interesting part is that the Nigerian security agencies can be availed this information, which will help in tracking and eliminating cases of collusion. So these are some of the key elements in the bill.
Now, talking about the National Domestic Workers Information System, which you talked about, how do you intend to go? How do you think Nigeria will go about that? Considering the fact that we do not even have adequate data for the population, of people in the country. Now you're talking about just domestic workers. Do you think that is possible?
Very much so. Interestingly enough, the idea is to create a new economy from the intendment of this bill. The new economy envisages employment agencies will spring up who will be responsible for recruiting, training, and capturing this record for onward transmission to the national database. These are the proxies and these are the frameworks. In fact, the possibilities and the opportunities in the sector are quite massive. Employment generation will be made available because these agencies will come up to recruit young people that they will be paying to be keeping record. They will establish training schools. I have one, I think, during the public hearing. Nani's Academy from Lagos came and presented a very good best case scenario of how they are recruiting and training and deploying domestic help in households. So basically, it is something that the society really needs and it's yearning for, and I think the need will drive the creation of that database.
Do you think that our cultural background will allow this proposal to fly? I'm saying on the background of the fact that a lot of people bring relatives into their homes in the guise of wanting to give them a better life, not really to make them domestic help. Do you think they want to key into this and want to go through the formal and regulated procedure to get a...
You see, the nature of the modern economy as it is today, here we are all members, we all have families. But back home, we have drivers, we have cooks, we have stewards, we have people who take care of the home front for us. And of course, from the women folk, the need to balance between the official responsibility and the family responsibility is always there. So the possibility is massive. It will always be there. Our cultural background not only encourages that, but it will also be an incentive kind of. The point is that in the bill, we have made provision for such kind of relationship. If you choose to go back home and employ your relation as a domestic aid, domestic assistant, as we are hoping to have that cadre, you are expected to train that, to make provision for the education and training of that child below the age of 18. It is your responsibility to train and to make sure that all the benefits accruable to a formal employee are extended to the same family relation. So for me, it is even an opportunity for a responsible family management system that will come into being.
All right, thank you. I was going to ask earlier if the bill takes into cognizance the live-in helps. Those you just bring, they are probably below 18.
Relations.
They live with you, they go to school, and then, they do chores in the home.
The bill provides that it is your responsibility. We are not stopping you, but it is your responsibility to train them, give them education, provide them decent livelihood, and also save their earnings until they have come of age. Okay. It's part of the requirements of the bill, and I think it's a good thing.
All right. A.I.G. Wilson in Aligu, what do we know from the security perspective? What experiences have we had that is available to you regarding what domestic helps can be up to, the people they collaborate with, and those things that should be taken into consideration when you are bringing in people to live with you, at least pending when the bill becomes law?
Thank you. I think I try to get by the statistics of violence and other malfeasance committed by, caregivers or house help and all that, but I didn't come about. But I think the number is huge. A lot of lives have been lost, a lot of abuses, sexual offenses, rape, kidnapping, and the rest of them. And when you look at it, most of the time, this occur within a few days or weeks of the engagement. And if you look at the statistics critically, usually these crimes occur for those who have not stayed that long, maybe 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, or even 1 week. And so we have the situation whereby, and when you go into some of these cases, what you discover is that they don't even know this house help they engage very well. Unfortunately, some of them are even foreigners. So you are never going to be able to track them or trace them. And so what you feel, people, those who cannot even pass basic background check test or drug test are engaged. And so what you discover is, and when the people engage, they are usually in a hurry because of the pressure of work. They just get somebody, oh, do you have a relation? Might be your driver, might be somebody that you know. And they bring this individual who is not even familiar with you. You cannot ever go into trace. And so usually the failure to conduct proper background check has been responsible, and drug check. And even whom does these domestic servants relate with, people never get to observe. And so you continue to have cases like stated earlier, children are being stolen, children are being maltreated. But if you look at it critically, we look at these things as a minor thing. And I think if it is harnessed, it's a big industry. But it is important that in dealing with the issues of domestic help or house help, it is important that you do not take chances. The decisions you make could be your lifesaver. But people make these critical decisions without any intentionality. They just think it's a minor thing, and it has cost lives. So from the police perspective, and the police is always willing to render help in terms of biometrics. If you engage somebody and you tell your local police station, they have the capacity to take fingerprints and photograph that can be stored just in case. And in most homes, how many homes can afford CCTV? And so many things go unnoticed. These guys are not even monitored because the mother goes to work, the father goes to work. When you come, you don't know what has taken place in the house. And engage in conversations within the family that ordinarily should not be exposed. And the domestic servant gets to hear that Oga is expecting some money to come. And these things are carelessly discussed. And even the domestic servant may not even have the intention to steal, but because he's not properly educated, those he interacts with, he say, I heard Oga, he said, in 5 days' time, some money is going to come. And what do? That area might be the people using cannabis and the criminals among them. And they begin to recruit. We have job at this address. And what do? They just come. Or you're in the car, you're making a phone call. Why is that? When is it going to happen? And the guy is there on the steering. He's driving, you don't know what's going on. So there is a need for people to be cautious in the discussions they make, in their movement, in keeping their movement. If you want to travel to the United States and you are discussing it carelessly, the guy knows that you have some foreign currency that you take with you. And it's possible to organize. Because if you go to the underworld of crime and you look at it on the surface, you don't think anything happens, but below the surface, because the guy who is recruiting, and once they have a job to do, they could take somebody from very far state and all that, and before you step out of your house, they are there. So I think there is a need for proper education of a lot of discretion on the part of people in the kind of conversations
they have around
domestic servant.
Thank you so much, AIG Naligo, retired. Of course, we'll get back to you on all of this and how the security, operatives can also help in some of these cases. But let's get to Grace Palm now, Director of Women and Children, National Human Rights Commission. Apart from the stories and cases that we get to see in the media, personal experiences and all of that, how many of these cases are reported to the National Human Rights Commission? How many has been documented so far? And then what's your take on this domestic workers and employers bill?
Okay, thank you. I think at the National Human Rights Commission, most of the cases we've received is from the other parties, house helps reporting their employers. So it's because when it gets to the one we've just discussed now is like it has become a crime. So mostly handled by the police or the security agencies. So we do receive a lot of complaints, regarding children being molested in homes, children being molested sexually, children being tortured, even some to death. We've had some. In fact, right now in our Just office, we have a lady who is being prosecuted, who is in custody for killing her house help. She boiled water and made the girl sit inside the water, and the girl was burnt and eventually got infected and died. And so there's so many like that. Each day you sit in the office, cases like that come to you. You see a house help whose bag has been battered, razor blades, wounds, fresh wounds, old wounds all over their bodies. Some of them come disfigured, some with a woman. I remember one that came to the office. In fact, I was weeping that day. The woman had, tried to put a knife, that the girl talks too much and she lies. So she put a knife on the fire and gummed the girl's mouth, to gum her mouth so she stops lying or talking. So we get a lot of those ones. Children are going through a lot in this country. I can't tell the statistics, but it's quite high, of children like that. And sometimes you see parents, you call the parents, come and pick your child from this woman's home because this is what is happening to this child. And the parents don't even want to come and pick their children. I think poverty has a lot to do with this, because the parents, there was one I called and he was crying over the phone. Madam, I have 8 children. What do you want me to do? If I collect this one, it's going to add to my burden. So what do I do? So there are situations like that, very, very, very pathetic situations like that. And then there are some that are raped, the children of their employers, rape them repeatedly, and there's nothing they can do about it. They just condone it until it gets out of hand, and probably they tell a neighbor, and then the neighbor brings them to the National Human Rights Commission or something like that. So our children are going through a lot. The domestic workers are going through a lot. And I'm particularly, very happy with this bill. The first time I heard about it and I tried to read through it, I was really, really excited about it. Because for the first time in Nigeria, we're going to have like a legal framework, that brings a combination of the Child Rights Act, there's the Labor Act there, and then there's also the Constitution, Fundamental Human Rights provision in Chapter 4 of our Constitution, all combined in one document or in one instrument to be able to help us address these issues, because it's something that, it's something that we must address as a nation if we want to move forward, because we keep saying that children are our future. So how are you taking care of that future? Are we surprised that we have all these uprisings today, Boko Haram and all other? They're all young, very young people. What happened? Something must have happened, for them to be what they are today. Because you don't bring up a child into the world for the child to be wayward or for the child to be a criminal. But it's because of the way we have brought these children. Employers or relations even go to the village, deceive them. Give me your child. I'm going to put this child in school. They bring the child to town, and 3 years, 4 years down the line, the child is still sitting at home and just looking after their own children. I mean, a child is looking after a child. So you can imagine, because they also need care at that age, because most of them are underage children. They're not up to 18 years. And you know the definition of a child in the Child Rights Act is 18 years. Any child below the age of 18 is a child. So you're bringing in a child into your home to take care of your own child. And then the children, they face so much discrimination. You're giving your children this food, and then the house help's food is different. And those house help, like I said, some of them are their relations. So you give your children, and the child is looking. And the child is developing animosity and hatred for your own children and you as well. So at the end of the day, the child harms your own child, and it becomes an issue. So this is the kind of things that we're breathing in this society, the kind of children we're breathing in this society, and we say children are our future. And I keep wondering, what are we doing, to make sure that that future is good enough? What are we doing to bring up children in an atmosphere that they're able to grow up to realize their potentials? So there's so much going on, and I am excited about this bill, honestly. I am.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for your contribution so far. We'll get back to you. Let's get to Professor Bernard Owumi, who's joined us from Abeokuta. Prof, I know you've had the privilege of listening in and getting the thoughts of everyone here in the studio, but would you say that this bill addresses all the concerns on both sides, the employer side and the employee side, and even those leaving kids who come in just to do chores and run around, run errands in the house?
Yes, we keep saying.
You're talking.
All right, Professor Owumi, we hope that you can hear us and would rectify that if it's from our end, and if it's from yours, please fix it so we can hear your thoughts on this issue. Let's get back here now and talk more with Senator Hussaini. You already shared your experience and why you thought about this bill. But a lot of people would think that this is aimed or crafted at protecting the elites, who are the employers, basically. You already gave us some of the elements in the bill, but specifically now, talk about how this would protect the vulnerable, who are, the maids themselves. Away from what you have said about getting documented and all of that and everything. But how do you monitor? Because like Grace Palm said, some of those people don't even want to leave their abusive employers. They remain there, they don't complain, they don't report. So how would this bill protect them?
Well, before I answer the second part of the question, let me answer the first part. The first part dealing with the issue of protection of the elites. I think the intendment of the bill is very clear. Both sides of the spectrum are protected. The employers are protected as well, and the employees are also protected. If you look through the penalties imposed on infringement of the bill, you will discover that the employers are also at risk of facing penalties for abuses, sexual abuses, for infringement and some infractions in the bill. So it is never intended to protect any segment. It is intended to protect both sides of the spectrum, the employer and the employee. Secondly, the issue of the vulnerability and the protection of the vulnerable people in the society. That's part of the penalties there. We have upped the penalty in case of sexual or physical abuse to 1 year with a fine of 100,000. I think maybe with even the situation of for a naira now, we will probably be looking at 1 million naira. I think at the final say we should be looking at even higher penalty. So the content covers both sides of the spectrum, the employees and the employer. And like Madam just mentioned, it is a combination of many acts put together to ensure that we have to call, both sides of the divide legislation that will be able to cater for the protection and the protection and the interest of every part of the employer-employee relationship.
All right, thank you very much, Senator Hussaini. I understand that Professor Owumi is back. So let's get quickly to Abeokuta. Prof, I was asking earlier, since you've had the privilege of listening to every contribution from this studio so far, would you say that this bill addresses all the concerns from the side of the employer and the side of the employees?
The bill really has done the little it can as far as it concerns. It's echoing. Said addressing the issue of the domestic workers, taking care of the parents or the employers, as it were. But the issue really goes beyond.
We seem to have lost Prof again. I'm sure whatever the issue is, that our engineers will work with the people on the other side to get the issues fixed. Let me get back to AIG Wilson in Alegu. Now, you've talked about, and pretty much until Grace Palm waded in, we've talked about one side of the aisle. We've talked about what employees do to their employers. But what's the experience that you have from the other side? The maltreatment of young people in homes just because they are helps?
But I think most of those things are covered by relevant penal laws, the penal code and the criminal code. I say that because when you heard somebody like the example she gave, there is a provision for criminal force causing grievous hurt, that you even disfigure a child or anybody for that matter. So some of those things are covered, and those are cases that the juvenile division section, the Nigeria police handles, that deal with such cases, and they are quite regular. Most of the complaints are even brought by neighbors who observe the abuse, and they bring them to the police, and they are usually dealt with. And some even prominent individuals, including lawyers, have had to be prosecuted, and I think awarded appropriate punishment. So the law protects all the vulnerable, whether the strong or the weak, and the police is dealing with that all the time. But all this affects our common humanity, because that child that you think is not yours, is yours, because if the child becomes a doctor or a lawyer, you don't know who defends you when you go to the hospital, who treats you. It could be that child that was abused. So the society should look at every child as their child or their children. And so the police, in dealing with this, the juvenile section, I don't know what, maybe they've given it a name. In some clime, they call it the family support unit, that deal with issues of domestic abuse.
Welfare, some of that.
Welfare, family support unit, juvenile section, and all that is dealing with that. And there are police officers, particularly the women police officers, man those offices, and they are dealt with. And they are very senior officers that man those offices, because those things are taken seriously, because they occur all the time. Sometimes they put fire, that you are a thief, they put fire in the hand, and hold the hand, and the palms get burnt. Some get disfigured for life. So a lot of these things happen. And in some of them, because in the case of grievous assault, for example, those are no cases you can compound. I mean, the parent of the child cannot come and say, look, the offender is my senior brother or my junior brother. And the law made provision that they are not compoundable. That means the commissioner of police or whoever is the complainant, not the parents. So they are taken very seriously and dealt with. But it also calls for communal approach. When you are observing some of these things, the child may never have the opportunity to report unless somebody comes across. Some go to the Human Rights Commission, but a lot of them go to the police. But And the advice senior officers give that these cases are to be taken as criminal offenses, not family issues that can just be buried under the carpet. And so such education that we give our subordinate officers is helpful. But the society has a critical role to play, and the society can make a difference, because nobody lives in isolation. You live in a neighborhood, whether you live in other places where you hear noise. It's just that some people don't take it that serious. But I say that these cases are properly investigated and prosecuted.
All right, AIG, now talking about properly investigated, you know, some people may want to say that the cases that are properly investigated is when the employers are affected mostly, but when it's you know, for the house helps themselves, sometimes they get thrown out because the employers are able to buy their way you know, out of the case in certain cases, and then except for very serious ones, and if there's a media you know, attention around the particular situation, that's where they get, you know, justice. But let's pause you at that point. Okay. I'm sure you'd want to respond. Let's get to the professor. We need to hear his input on this particular matter. Prof, I'm sure your connection is much better now. Would like you to, you know, share your thoughts with us about this Domestic Workers and Employers Bill.
The contribution of our honorable is commendable, but be that as it may, you will find out that it's of the whole facing. You will understand that there is no devoid of crime. Crime is part of society. It shows the direction of government's activities and so on and so forth. So we use the level of crime to be able to control how society is going, whether it's stable or not. With that. But over and above that, in our society here, so many of the social institutions are not performing their duties as expected. Right from the all of these have been affected tremendously by development, urbanization, and our values have actually been washed down to the extent that people money all the time. Our attitude in terms of hard work, hitherto we used to do that. Hard work will make you earn your living. Everybody wants quick money. So the issue of violence and being on the high side is a function of this decade in society. So families must do their own bit. It is not just the issue of employment, because the honorable senator has tried to is an aspect of the issue that we are talking about here. There are other parts of this problem, and if they are not addressed, they will begin to have problem in terms of managing society. Over and above that, one will say that in a society where values are not clearly indicated or stated, and then the right channels to making it, you shall secure them, then there is no way there will be no problem. But sometimes are also funny that these issues are talked about only when in upper class in society are affected. The case of Lucky Igbenedion, His Excellency, the former governor of Edo State, the mother was also murdered in similar situation. The same thing also applied to the former Vice Chancellor of Federal University of Technology, Akure, by domestic workers. So where do we begin from? And you find out that most of these people that have been affected, take, for instance, the recent case of Ajimogbobia's daughter. This is somebody whose society has spent so much money on, government has spent, and then just along the line, somebody will come and waste her. It is not good enough. My own attitude to some of these issues of crime in society is that, well, there is no society. But when it happens like this, government talks about it, the media promotes it, but there is no punishment. Punishment are meted out, the public hardly get to know. So the spectrum, right from when the crime is committed, through to investigation and prosecution, and then conviction, the public should also be sensitized. That is one way you can stop some of this problem. Like they say, we talk about corruption in society, and you is corrupt. It is difficult when you don't prosecute such a person and then convict. When he's convicted, there is no punishment. Many of them have been let off the hook, either at the Court of Appeal or Supreme Court, and so on and so forth. These things are not sufficient to stem crime in society. But what Honorable Senator has done, the distinguished Senator has done, I think is good enough. It's a start problem, a part of the solution to the problem we're having in society. And some of us have noted, as it were, that the problem in Nigeria really is not laws. There are so many laws that are supposed to guide our activities, but implementation seems. So our law enforcement agencies must do their best to ensure that some of these things are thoroughly investigated and people are punished for crimes committed against citizens. Thank you.
Very much. Thank you, Professor Wumi, for that contribution there. Let's get back here in the studio. And I had wanted to ask that earlier because it's like he said, there are laws, a lot of laws. Did your bill consider implementation, enforcement? Are you going to leave it to the police to investigate it as crime, or you are going to have a commission? Are you going to have a body responsible for this? How do you intend that this will be combated?
Okay, thank you very much. Quite interestingly enough, this is a bill that will that I'll probably say is self-propelled. Now, with the creation of employment agencies between the employee and the employer, it is the responsibility of the employment agencies, because their bread and butter comes from the number of employees they are able to train and to send out. So therefore, it is their responsibility to look and to keep an eye on the condition of service of the employee, and at the same time to report cases of abuse. That's one. Secondly, and most importantly again, the intendment again is to bring about enlightenment in the society. As it were, we don't have any effective legislation in place dealing with cases of domestic workers. So with this, we are beginning to open up the space so that inputs and then understanding of the dynamics of worker-employer relationship at the home front is brought to the public limelight. Years back, there was nothing like this, and things happened under the table, and maybe some aspect of the Child Labor Act, aspect of Juvenile Acts are brought to bear, but having such a harmonized bill that will deal with this matter. In any case, no law is cast in stone. As we go along the dynamics of the society, we can be making amendments, improve on it, and then until we have such a working document.
Thank you, Senator Hussaini. I'd like to get to Grace Palm now. I'm sure you heard Professor Wumi talked about values, being responsible for some of these stories that we see. In the past, we used to hear stories of people who are taking maids, not even relatives, and eventually get them educated or trained and then becoming something in society. Some of them go ahead, to even recognize their caregivers as their parents, because of how much love and attention they got, But all of that, you rarely hear stories like that anymore. You want to ask why that is happening, why that is a trend. And then also speak about the fact that most of these domestic workers, according to statistics, are women. Why is that also?
Okay. I think your first question about our values, yes, we all agree here that our values have really changed. In those days, our parents were more patient. Our parents were more they valued human beings, I think, more than us these days. And then there's also the economic issue too. You know, things where things are harder now, so people tend to want to make it quick, you know, and so they go into some of these crimes. And then I think also in those days, our foreparents too were more the community. It was more like a community in those days, but now people are looking out for their own interest. Like he mentioned earlier, you know, children in those days, you see a child going wrong and you correct that child because you know it's a child in the neighborhood. But these days, when you do that, the parents will come and attack you. Even we have heard of parents that even go to schools to quarrel or fight the teachers for correcting their children. So really, our values have really changed. And then the question about
having more women.
I think it has to do with our culture as well. You know, most cultures, you know, they would rather educate the male child than to educate the girl child. And so the girl child is mostly at home, and they now send them to go and do domestic work to at least bring some income to the family. So that's one of the things that I think is irresponsible. And then people think that, you know, they prefer to have women work for them because a woman is trained to do domestic work, you know, so they're better at doing domestic work than the male. So I think those are some of the reasons why. And then this female find themselves, you know, at very young age because they're not in school or they are school dropouts. They now find themselves having to fend for themselves. Some of them actually go look for the employment because they have nothing else to do. You're not in school, you're at home, and you need to take care of yourself. So they go and go out to look for these domestic jobs. But you know, women too, I have to say this, that women too are more hardworking than the male.
Louder.
Yeah, they are. and so they don't want to lazy around like the boys, go play football, come back, and then the food is ready. So a woman would like to say, I want to take care of myself. So let me go look for a job so that I can take care of myself. I mean, I'm sure we all agree.
Of course. We all agree.
They're more responsible.
I'd rather not say anyway. No, we allow you to win.
Just one. You didn't allow me. The senator voted for us, so I mean, it means that it's been passed. The years have it.
Yeah, so they're more responsible, really.
The eyes have it.
But let me get back to you were going to respond earlier when someone was sitting here.
Yeah, you see, I am not saying there are no crook police officers, but a very high percentage are core professionals. And I think the UK government, the UK Department for International Development, made a lot of effort working with the Nigerian Police Force to develop that juvenile or family support unit, and they established so that cases of domestic abuse, sexual abuse of minors and all that can, you know, be properly handled professionally. I think they even created counters that will separate, so that when you come to lodge such complaint, it's not everybody, you know, get to hear about it. So I think the police has developed quite well in dealing with these cases of domestic violence against minors and other members of a household. So when I say there will be proper investigation, I mean it, because they are core professionals. And of course, some others may collect bribes. That I cannot stay here and say it doesn't happen. It may happen, but those have tiny group, tiny, because I think the police take and that is why I told you, that department in every police division, at least superintendent of police, is in charge of that section. I said this because my niece is responsible, I think for handling that juvenile section, dealing with this domestic violence against minors in homes and the rest of it.
Okay.
That's why I stayed.
AIG Nabigo.
So, yeah.
Thank you so much. Of course, we agree with you that, not everyone is actually bad and
I like the
corrupt.
emphasis on tiny.
Yeah. So, but let me get to Senator Hussaini now. Senator Hussaini, I want to find out if there's any provision as regards how domestic helps are recruited. I'm asking that because there's a new trend in town where IDPs are now, I don't know, are they recruited or they're just, carried from there because they're not properly taken care of, and then people now take advantage of them. You now find them in homes in different parts of the country. When they are asked, they tell you, oh, well, something happened, I'm in an IDP camp. Is there anything about, how these, children, or if you like, not children anymore because you said from 18 years, because must there be a consent, from parents or caregivers before they are recruited? I'm asking because of the IDP scenario, for example, that is currently trending at the moment.
Okay, thank you very much. Principally, I think the drivers to all of these issues is mainly absence of any established framework, any legislation that will deal with matters like this. Now, I like what my sister Grace just said, speaking about poverty in the society. People are just anxious to get rid of their children and to go and, if I can just push him out of the way, I won't have to worry about feeding him and taking care of him or her. But principally, I think the fluid nature of the recruitment process, we have, I know the system that operates is like there are some women that go into the villages, pick girls, bring them into the cities, quota them.
Sometimes without the consent of their parents, without even speaking with anyone. They
even
just
stolen children. Even stolen children. They pick phone, oh, I have brought some house help if you need any. And then that's how it is like an underworld thing. So with the framework we are putting in place, the employment agencies, actually it is a choice for you to make. Now, just put this in your mind. That house help you are bringing in without any history, no character referencing, no physiological history. Let us hypothetically agree that he's carrying a communicable disease that you don't know. What happens? You are bringing danger into your family. For instance, hepatitis. What happens? So these are the kind of things that drive the underworld dealings in this part of the society. So the intention is, if we have the recruitment agencies properly registered, training, and then checking and making sure that the biometrics of the intended employee is kept, recorded, kept, health record checked. It is your choice. You are happy that, yes, I have somebody who is well trained. I am happy to leave my family behind with him or her. But principally, the underworld nature of the recruitment process now, you go to IDP camps, you go to villages, very far villages. In fact, in Kano State, there is a particular part of Kano, Gaya, Dawakin Kudu, those axes, they are very popular at bringing their children and throwing them into this unfortunate business. And I think that's the whole idea behind this bill.
So will there be penalty if people are recruited without, consent from families?
Oh, definitely. That's 1 year. That's 1 year jail term. 1 year jail term. That's the intendment of the bill. Okay. Yes.
All right. So the conversation will continue, but let's quickly take this break. Stay with us. All right, welcome back. It's still Good Morning Nigeria, live on the network service of the NTA. And our focus today is on domestic workers and employers bill. Our guests are still very much with us. Let's quickly get to Prof now. Prof joins us all the way from Abeokuta. Would like you to, also speak about how successful you think this will be if it's eventually assented to, considering the fact that Nigerians, not Nigerians, let's just say people like cheap labor, with this bill, and if it's implemented eventually, of course, it's going to be more expensive to get help or to get a driver, to get a maid and all of that. And people may want to boycott such agencies and want to go the normal route of going to villages or going to their relatives to get help. Do you think that anything can be done to make this successful and make it impactful? What will be your recommendation to the senator who is the proposal of this bill?
I think it's a nice one, and it is an addition to what is existing or what is on ground. When an assistant president will help to improve on ground. Most of the things we'll be talking about actually are due cases. There are a lot of cases that are happening. So what I would really advise in this is, once the bills are sent to, the work the media is required. Getting to people who use the old supplier and do it. Who are areas who get information and the implication of not complying. And most of us whose domestic workers are well educated, so I don't really have any fear as far as that is concerned. You commit any offense in terms of not complying with regulation or bill when eventually pass, then you pay the price. But we need to go to the rural areas, make parents or citizens know the implication. Most times, friends have some of these bills that have been passed. And on the street does not know. So we need publicity. It is adequately value.
All right, Professor Wumi, unfortunately, I'm not sure why the audio from your end is not quite good enough, but I was able to get something from Prof. He was talking about publicity, creating awareness. I don't know how much. Of course, it may not be within your purview to begin to create awareness if it becomes law, but how far have you gone with the bill? Has it got concurrence of the House of Representatives, and what are the chances of presidential assent?
Well, first of all, let me address the issue of publicity. I think during the third reading of the bill, all the stakeholders were part of the third reading of the bill. The CSOs, the NGOs, agencies of government, Ministry of Information, every agency of government was invited and inputs were taken. And I think it is our responsibility as responsible citizens to keep an eye and to familiarize ourselves with every law that has been made in the land. It is our responsibility. Ignorance of the law
it's not an excuse.
It's no excuse. So that's one. Secondly, again, I think regarding the concurrence and regarding the accent, I don't entertain any fear on that, because it's a noble bill that will address a lot of the ills that we are facing. Beyond even all of that, it is creating a new economy. The agencies that will be springing up to recruit, train, deploy will definitely create employment opportunities for our teeming youth that are roaming the street without job to do. At the same time, the ICT component of it, the development of the software and the hardware and the creation of the database will deepen our ICT infrastructure and strengthen it. So I think I have no, I'm not entertaining any fear regarding concurrence or accent, because it's a bill whose time has come. Yeah.
Does this bill protect foreign domestic workers? Because, you know, while we're on the break, you talked about the fact that there are some Nigerians who prefer, you know, to patronize foreigners. So what does this bill say about them?
Yeah, the bill is still very clear about them. Any foreign worker who intends to work in Nigeria or even who intends to work out of Nigeria must register his biometrics taken, because actually we are perhaps even doing the work of NAPTIP. I'm surprised that they're not here. The National Agency for Prohibition and Trafficking of Human Persons and all that. They ought to be here, because part of the intendment of the bill is to also stem the tide of all these people who just drive out of Nigeria, you know, our young girls and boys, you know, human trafficking in the name of securing employment. If we have employment agencies back home here, and then there is a demand for a category of domestic workers, most particularly in the Middle East and the Far East, I think those agencies will be better placed to recruit based on the requirements of the intended employer. At the same time, because most of our young men and women who leave Nigeria, they end up in this category of workers. So if this opportunity is created back home here, I don't see it will stem the tide of the outflow, the Japa syndrome.
Are you sure about that? Some Nigerians, no matter how educated, prefer to clean outside the country than to be a cleaner in their own home. There's this big man syndrome.
Yes, I agree with
back home.
I agree with you, but because the absence of the framework is also a contributing factor. If you have a system, a law in place, surely it is better, you are better off staying in Nigeria, working in Nigeria, than working out of Nigeria.
All right, Grace Palm, I want to find out how you think this would really work, because isn't that we're going to have law enforcement agencies going to homes and checking if the maids they have are accredited or not, you know, because how do we now know that you did not recruit from the back door, or, you know?
We may not really have to go from door to door, you know, looking for that kind of scenario. But I think this bill is a starting point. When people know that there's a bill like this in place, and they know that it can work if we are determined to make it work, you know, it will go a long way, you know, in reducing some of these things. It may not, you know, it's not like a soundproof bill that will take care of everything, but at least, you know, I'm excited that there is a starting point. We can start like this gradually. By the time people are prosecuted, or people have to pay fines, or people are held accountable, it may send a signal to the others who are doing it behind the scene to begin to rethink their actions. If you don't do this, the law may catch up with you. So you begin to think, and then gradually we will get there. I mean, let's start from somewhere and see how far we go.
All right. Thank you very much. Let me get to AIG Wilson and Alego retired as we gradually wind down. What would be your advice to Nigerians, both those who seek to be recruited and those who are recruiting, and that's in spite of this bill, which hasn't even become law, by the way?
I think every decision you make about engaging in house help could be your life-saving or life-losing decision. Therefore, you've got to employ people whose addresses are traceable. Individuals who can be who should be properly screened. People that don't go to one megad in one site and recommend somebody to you. If that guy commits a crime, nobody will be able to trace the person. And in terms of employing a foreigner, as much as possible, we are a big country too. Let us see, does that individual have proper documentation to be in Nigeria? Because we also talk of work permit, because if he doesn't have at least ECOWAS travel document or a passport, that if something happens, at least you can trace. But what we experience most of the time, things happen and these individuals, you can never trace them anywhere. So it's important that you do that, and above all, try to have basic security checks within your house, within your neighbors, so that once something is happening, you can raise alarm and you can be assisted. Sometimes you just create a very high wall, and because you are in that wall, you are shouting in your compound, the neighbor does not get to hear. So comply with urban approved building rules so that you don't just create a prison, and even when you are shouting, your neighbor will not get to know about it. So it's very, very critical. And another thing that I think you should do is having, I know CCTV is expensive, but you can have it. And above all, our common humanity, love, show love to that domestic worker, because love conquers. I have seen somebody, an antelope from the bush goes to that camp, and it's in the hand of that person. When I was somewhere in Namibia many years ago, this white guy, he was in the border with Botswana, and at 12 o'clock, the antelope will come from the bush because the guy showed it love. So when you show love, I believe, not those ones that come today that want to steal, but those that have stayed with you for a long time, your drivers, your cooks, your gardeners, and all those who work with you in the house. If you regard them as part of your household, as your friends, maybe you educate their children if they are already gone past the age of education. And I think when you show such love, it is possible. It's not completely going to eliminate a wicked person.
And that reminds me, I think we had a past president who celebrated one of his cooks who had served him for a very long time at the point of retirement. Yes, you know, so, of course, it's very important.
Proper background check, never neglect it. Seed leaves when outsiders are around. When you want to travel abroad, they know you could have pounds, euro, or dollars. It could be waylaid. So it's important to keep such information restricted.
To yourself.
Yes.
But again, talking about keeping restrictions and keeping information to yourself, we're in the social media age. A lot of people announce their trips on their social media pages. Sometimes the domestic helps are not even the you know, the people behind some of these cases. The people outside just get the help of domestic helps when they get the information from social media pages of some of these, you know, employers. It's I mean, a lot of issues that we need to, you know, deal with as we talk about this. But, you know, as we round up the conversation, I'd like to find out what you foresee, what you picture with this bill if it eventually becomes law. Because in some other parts of the world, caregiving is an organized system. You understand. So in Nigeria, where a lot of things are disorganized, I'm sure you understand. So do you see that? Do you think that this will eventually?
my expectation from the if this bill is enacted and accented to, is that one, it will contribute significantly to national economic progress and prosperity. It will impact security administration. It will help a lot of agencies. NAPTIP is one, the human trafficking part of it. Federal Ministry of Labor, that will be responsible for hosting the domestic workers information system platform, will also have to engage in training, staff development. You know, you are bringing in, you are formalizing an informal sector of almost 20 million people, moving them into the economy. Revenue generation will be enhanced. Tax will be paid by the agencies, the recruitment agencies, to government. So it has a lot of benefit to the society. And then at the same time, you are bringing in a lot of laws under one umbrella, and at the same time, and in the same manner, you are improving the national economy and national development. Those are my expectations and my hope the accentment of this bill. All
right, and Grace Pam, final words.
Okay, I think I'm going to talk from the other side as usual.
The balance is needed.
Yes, as we must respect the rights and dignity, you know, of these workers that we employ. They're as much as human beings as we are, you know, the employers as well. So you treat them with dignity, treat them, don't discriminate against them, because they are also human beings. They have human rights, and we have to protect their rights whenever they're in our homes. And we must not employ any child, any person, below the age of 18. And to parents, I'll also say, do not give out your children underage for employment for any reason. you know, keep those children, whatever you're eating, whatever your complaints are about not being able to take care of them, they are better off in your home than in somebody else's home.
What about living in?
Living
In, you know, you bring them as whether relatives or you just...
They're not employed.
They're not employed. You bring them
yes, those ones too. When you make promises to them that you bring them up and put them in school, please make sure you honor your words, you know, and put those children in school. Because we're having issues with children today because of those kind of neglect. You know, we've neglected our children for too long. And so the children now grow up with that, you know, a mentality of rejection. And if I'm rejected, now they rebel against the society. And that's what we're having today. So please, every parent, play your role. Employers, play your role. Government, play your roles. Ensure that we have free education for our children at every age, so that they'll be able to, when children are educated, you know the difference it makes in their lives. So please, everybody has a part to play. We all have a part to play, government, parents, and the employers.
Thank you so much, Grace Palm. I think I would leave the conversation at this point. We hope to have Senator Hussaini back with us when it is finally assented to. And of course, we'll just stay with you on this and see the success that it brings to Nigeria. Thank you so much, Senator Babangida Hussaini, Wakili Kazare.
Wali Kazari.
Wali Kazare, yes, representing Jigawa Northwest Senatorial District and sponsor of the bill. We appreciate you for your people-centered legislation and selfless service, of course, and as you're popularly called, the stabilizer.
Thank you very much.
Hope that is seen by your people and Nigeria in general. Thank you. Of course, AIG Wilson Inalegu, retired former AIG Zone 9, Umuahia, and also former CP of City Ekiti and Kogi State. It was nice to have you in the studio. Thank you so much. I felt very secured, more secure today.
The police is your friend.
All right, Grace Palm, Director of Women and Children, National Human Rights Commission. Thank you. Always a pleasure to have you.
Thank you so
keep
much.
saying it loud and clear that women are very hardworking.
Yeah.
Yes.
They are.
And of course, Professor Bernard Owumi, Department of Sociology, University of Ibadan, and presently a visiting professor and Dean Postgraduate College, Chrisland University, Abuja, Ogun State. Thank you for being a part of the conversation. We hope to have you some other time, and of course with better audio signals. All right, so that's Good Morning Nigeria this Friday. Thank you so much for watching. Have a brilliant weekend.
All right, Victor Azu is my name. Have a great weekend and see you on Monday.